I want to start off asking you something personal. When was the last time you woke up feeling genuinely excited about your day? Not just okay or fine, but truly alive, like you had a direction, life has meaning and purpose. If you are struggling to remember, this video is for you because I have spent 40 years just going through the motions, doing what was expected, following someone else's success agenda, and living on someone else's life script. I want to share with you what exactly woke me up and how I finally started to live life on my own terms. I need to mention someone that I once knew. His name is Stanley, a family friend. I was sitting with him one day when he was 92 years old. He had worked for the government for 30 years and he retired at 60. 30 years working, 32 years in retirement, and I asked him how he enjoyed his retirement years. He told me that the first few years was fun. Him and his wife traveled to different countries and visited some friends they haven't met for years. And that was exciting. But after a few years, they ran out of places to go. So Stanley spent most of his time in his apartment, reading literature and going through those classic ancient texts, which he enjoyed reading. He looked at me and said something that I have never forgotten. If I have known I was going to live this long, I would have started something during the early retirement days. A small business, a part-time teaching gig, or anything like that. He loved literature and he always wanted to teach. He wanted to pass on his knowledge to the younger generation. He never did. Stanley passed away at 94, which means he stayed in retirement for 34 years, going through the motions. He was never stuck. He just never quite living the life that he was meant to live. I have been sitting with that story ever since. Because here's the question Stanley left with me, and I want to leave that question with you. What would you do with 34 years? If you are in your 30s or 40s and this question makes you feel uncomfortable, that's good. That uncomfortable feeling is a gift. If you are in your 50s and 60s and Stanley's story sounds a little too familiar, stay with me. If you're in your 70s and 80s, we can still chat because I have something for you too. I almost became Stanley, and here's the story of how I didn't. I grew up in Hong Kong, moved to Canada at 29, completed my university degree, got married, raised 4 children, built a career in IT project management. I was quite successful in today's society's scorecards. Life is running on its own autopilot mode, just going through the motions. Wake up, work, perform, repeat. We bought 2 cars, get a bigger house, went on vacations. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill, the feeling that no matter what you achieve, the satisfaction fades and you always go back and wanting more. You get the promotion, you feel good for a week, then it's Tuesday again. If you recognize that feeling, you're not broken, you're not ungrateful. You are simply living someone else's definition of the good life. And somewhere inside you, there's a quiet voice asking, is this really it? To me, that voice got loud enough that I stopped and listened. Have you ever had what I call the burning bush moment? That's the moment the ground shifted under me. A revelation so clear, so undeniable, that I could not go back to the life that I used to subscribe to, the way I used to live. My burning bush moment came at the age of 42. While still working full-time in the IT world, I signed up for a part-time master program in counseling. I did it for 4 years. My goal was to become a psychotherapist one day. Then, in 2006, my church held a campaign called the 40 Days of Purpose. based on a book by the best-selling author Rick Warren, Purpose-Driven Life. It has a spiritual exercise that asks one question: what on earth am I here for? Through that exercise, I created my life purpose statement for the first time: to inspire, equip, and mobilize people to live life to the fullest. I wrote a book called Reimagine Your Retirement, advocating a lifelong service rather than retreating to retirement. I gave a TEDx talk on living your childhood dreams. For the first time in my life, I felt that my life has a distinct purpose and that I'm walking toward the right direction. If you're feeling lost now, with no sense of direction, with no pull towards something, this feeling is not a flaw. This is an invitation, because your burning bush moment may be closer than you think. Now back to my story. From that mountaintop experience, something happened. A personal trauma hit me during my counseling career. At that time, I fully transitioned off from the IT world, and I was doing full-time counseling for 4 years. I won't describe the trauma in detail here, but I will tell you what it did to me. Everything I had built, the purpose, the mission, the clarity, the contribution, and my passion, they all went blank. I could no longer show up in the counseling room. But at that time, I really didn't know how. The work I believed I was called to do, I had to quit for good. I was stuck, completely frozen in burnout mode. I reached a point where I did not want to be here anymore. Considering my family and everything that we have built, I did not have the courage to walk away and disappear just like that. Through the fog of depression and burned out, I made one decision. That was to pick up the pieces and put it back together somehow. But at that time, I really don't know how. If you have experienced something like this that crushed your purpose and derailed your sense of direction, a loss, a health crisis, a broken relationship, an abrupt job termination, a chapter that ended before you were ready, I see all of you there. What happened to you is not the end of the story. It is the middle of it. More chapters are waiting to be written. I did what you do when you cannot follow your calling. I survived. Went back to IT, back to corporate life, because I needed a paycheck while I figure out how to put the pieces together. I landed in a very good job and put in 3 years of fulfilling work. One funny episode stood out during my job search before I landed on that job. I was sitting in a job interview with this young manager. I think he is only about 35 years old. He was sitting across me at the other end of the table. With his interview script in his hand, he asked me this question: "Joyce, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" I almost laughed out loud. Luckily, I didn't, because I was sitting there thinking, I see myself finally living the life that I've been trying to build since before you started your career. Joke aside, but that question cracked something open in me, because it forced me to ask myself, am I still going after my purpose, or am I just waiting for permission to stop? If you are feeling tired of following someone else's scorecards, tired of chasing a version of success that really don't belong to you, that exhaustion is telling you something important. It is not telling you to give up. It is telling you to change direction. Back to my story. The answer came sooner than I expected. The companies that I had been with for 3 years announced that they were relocating to another province. I wasn't in a position to uproot and move at that time, so we parted ways. Within a few weeks after saying goodbye to my old company, I landed on a new remote job, a fresh beginning. Lo and behold, at the 3 months mark, I was fired. 2 terminations back to back. I was 63 years old. If you have been pushed out by a forced retirement, a layoff, or a restructuring, and you're standing there asking, now what? Is this really it? I have been in that place too. I sat down with my life purpose statement after that second termination. I also reflected back on my book. For the 10 years that it has been published, I sold less than 100 copies. My life purpose, half lived, or even less. I was ready to burn this paper with my life purpose statement in it, because what's the point? And then I thought about Stanley. 34 years of drift. And I asked myself, is that where I'm headed? Or there's still something left to do? I chose to keep going, believing that there is still something important to do. At 65, I took a job on the other side of the country. I moved out west, 4,300 kilometers away from everything that is familiar. I moved from Ontario to Squamish, British Columbia. I drove towards mountains that I have never seen. Something about those mountains, their massive scale, their stillness, reminded me that the world is larger than my worst moments. I kept going. At 66, while keeping my full-time job, I completed my PhD in human relationships, researching the connection between simple living and human flourishing. And at 67, while all my friends are planning about their next overseas trips, I gave up my cruise and invested in becoming a certified meaning and purpose trainer, a facilitator, because I had finally understood what Stanley had been trying to teach me over the many years ago. It is not enough to find your purpose. You have to design and build a life around it, deliberately, intentionally, before the years run out. Psychologists call it the hedonic treadmill. I call it going through the motions. Stanley called it 34 years wondering of what it might have been. For you, you don't have to call it anything, but you must decide you are done with it. I am Dr. Joyce Lee, a wife, mother of 4, grandmother of 4, an agile coach, a lifelong learner, a minimalist, a TEDx speaker, and a published author. Someone who spent over 40 years going through the motions. Someone who has found her purpose and lost it. Someone who's been terminated. And someone who almost gave up at 63 and didn't. I want to say something directly to you, wherever you're in your special story right now. If you're going through the motions, or stuck in that hedonic treadmill, or you're performing someone else's success agenda, you are not too late. You are not ungrateful, and you are not broken. You are significant. Your life is worthwhile and it makes sense. There is a purpose for you worth marching toward. You were not made to go through the motions. You were not made to run on autopilot. You were made to design your one precious life with intention, clarity, and joy. The quiet voice asking, is this really it? It is not a problem. It is your North Star calling you home. If you are in your later years, like 70s or 80s, you don't have to do something grand. Just be intentional. Teach one person that you can. Share something that you know. Say something to support or encourage another person, to live every day with intention rather than by default. Stanley has literature. You have something else to offer. The world still needs it. This channel exists to help you find your passion, your gifts, your North Star. And I'm here to walk that journey with you. Subscribe and watch upcoming videos, because your most meaningful chapter is still ahead.